We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully your day is going well. It is Saturday. We are into the weekend, and we have the good fortune of having a guest on the show. And we were just talking about this beforehand, Ed. You're not really a guest. You're kind of a reoccurring character. And since and you're a professional at this. I mean, the listeners do a great job, but you're a professional. You've done this for years.
Yeah, if this is Cheers, I'm Norm or Cliff Clavin. You take your pick.
Yeah. And I'm Woody, the dumb guy.
There you go.
the dumb white guy. That's who I'll be. Well, Ed, there was no need to talk about what we would talk about today because there's so many things. And I've talked about this on the podcast, just about every podcast for the last 3 or 4 podcasts. And it's because I'm so gleeful of it. I love it. This whole decision by Judge Engeron in New York, summary judgment, and where he basically said, "Donnie, I'm taking all your shit." And I think that a lot of people don't realize, we've always been in anticipation of what's going to fall, and we're waiting for what's going to fall. That dropped like a fucking rock. That happened. Yeah. That's not changing. What was your gut reaction when you heard that judgment came out?
I laughed out loud, quite frankly, because I really did think that's kind of like if you're watching let's say a pompous ass walk away and step on a banana peel and fall on his butt. That's what it felt like.
And shit his pants on the way down.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's what it felt like. I mean, this guy who's just been for so long just skating by, and suddenly he falls on his ass, and it's a big fall. It shakes the building. That's what it felt like.
Do you think everybody understands just how devastating this is? Because like I say, we've all been waiting for the shoe to drop, whether he gets convicted. But it always seems like that. Oh, he'll never get indicted. Then he gets indicted. Now they're saying he's never going to be found guilty. Or this, I said before this lawsuit came out that this may be the most devastating thing to date to happen to Donald Trump. And the idea that they are going to put all his companies into receivership and they are going to dissolve them. That is fucking massive.
That's that is the other thing that it did was it showed everybody who was paying attention that this guy's been a grifter for so long. He's not a billionaire. He's never been close to it. No. All he's been able to do is it's been a shell game all along, and he got away with it far too long, and it really does bug me that he got away with it as long as he did. That there was enough shenanigans behind the scenes, so forth, that he was able to do this, and that banks let him get away with it, and insurance companies let him get away with it, and jurisdictions let him get away with it. That's kind of disturbing. But when it's finally come down to it, and we finally see a judge who says, "There's no way. I mean, we don't need a jury." Boom.
Somebody explained to me how Donald Trump got away with it for a long time. And this might ruffle the feathers of Democrats, but listen to this. And this makes a lot of sense. Because up until the time of 2015, when he decided to run for president under the Republican flag, he had been a Democrat for most of his life, all of his life. And as a Democrat with alleged amounts of money, he greased the palms of a lot of Democratic AGs and prosecutors and people in government in New York. And New York is largely a Democratic state. This is how he got away with it for so long. So you Democrats that are mad at the Republicans, you have some culpability in this situation as well. But now things changed. He got into an arena where he was a small fish in a big pond, and he basically got caught, gutted, and fried. And then that's what happened here.
And I couldn't be happier about it. I'm waiting to see when they put the final nail in the coffin what exactly the fine is going to be. But I imagine it's going to be earth-shaking, quite frankly. And I don't know if you'll have chump change left after they're done with it.
I think Donnie Trump will be broke after it's all done and have no properties. He will be nothing more than a pauper. Um, the important thing to note is that trial starts
Mhm.
Monday. Now
Yeah, that's,
he tried to get it delayed, but
oh yeah,
the judge came back today and says, no, we're getting to business on October 2nd, which is Monday. Now, what's interesting is I don't know if you call them prosecution. I'll call them that for the lack of a better term, prosecution in this lawsuit. They've got some interesting witnesses coming up. They're going to call Donald Trump.
oh yeah,
They're going to call Donald Trump Jr. and Eric, both of which are part of this lawsuit. Whatever happens to Donnie happens to them. They're also calling Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner and a bunch of other notable people.
yeah.
Some people are suspecting that Ivanka pretty much flipped on dad, save her ass, and that wouldn't be surprising.
No, she taught him. He taught her well. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, this is the thing. They will have to give evidence, and they'll be under oath.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting to see what the testimony is from all of them, because
Right.
they can't lie. I mean, they can, and they probably will, but that's, there's sanctions for that sort of thing.
Well, Letitia James is asking for $250 million bottom line.
Bottom line,
It could be 500 million, it could be a billion, because
yeah,
he adjusted his income up by $3.2 billion over a period of time. The amount of money he has stolen is just unbelievable to me. You know, whenever they talk about the January 6th and trying to overturn the election and these financial crimes, people will say that's or the only thing that's ever happened to a former president. We're not talking about former president anymore. His crimes are so big, I can't think of any other human even coming close to the crimes he's committed.
maybe Bernie Madoff.
Yeah.
I mean, the impact of Bernie Madoff might have been even bigger, but yeah, I mean, it's criminality on that level is what it
Right.
comes down to. It's a grift that's been going forever. And I don't know that they will ever be able to find the depths of it. And all the other things with Deutsche Bank and Russia and all of these other Saudi Arabia. I mean, he came right out and said the other day, and I think this is very, very telling. The valuations were fine because I could call somebody in Saudi Arabia who'd pay whatever I wanted.
But the problem is
And
he isn't going to
that's
get
an
that
admission
opportunity.
of
Yeah.
guilt, I think, to me, that he's but I think he's probably already got it. As I understand it, half of the investment at Trump Tower was foreign,
Right.
between Russia and the various Arab countries and so forth.
Well, the interesting
Um,
thing about Trump Tower is that Trump Tower is a condominium. So all the
right.
individuals own their property in that tower. He was basically a management firm in that. I mean, he maybe bought it originally, then sold all these, parceled it out. But the thing about it is that people are trying to suggest that, well, that only includes the stuff in New York, and frankly, that's not true, because um, they are going to dissolve all his LLCs. And his LLCs, there's hundreds of them, and they kind of spider web through fucking everything. So there's
That's
an
it.
LLC in New York that's handling Mar-a-Lago or Doral or something.
Yeah, that I thought it was funny that Eric comes out. I think it was Eric, and says, "Well, they're not valuing things properly," which seems kind of funny that he would say that. I think they
Yeah.
valued Mar-a-Lago at 18 billion or something like that. And I mean, 18 million, and no, it's more than that. I can't remember the exact figure. He thought it was worth a billion, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's you can't do anything with it. You've got what's there, and that's it. It's this golf club, and that's all there is to it.
Well,
And the
well, the thing is that Donald Trump gamed himself in this situation. Donald Trump suggests that it's worth $200-300 million. And it might be if it was a private residence.
Right. But it's not.
No, in order to save money on taxes, he turned it into a hotel or a club or something like that. So that valuation came out at about 18 million in 2011. They're thinking more like around 27, 28 million.
Yeah.
But the reason it's valued is because that's what the state of New York says it is. It's not the judge or anybody like that. And the reason it's that value is because Donald Trump was once again trying to grift money and save money on taxes. But he fucked himself over. Now, I think the reason they're concerned about this is what people have to understand, this whole idea of putting his stuff into receivership and selling things off isn't the punishment part of this. This is kind of the attempt to unravel all the fraud. They're going to liquidate things to pay off debt and hopefully make everybody whole. But while it is a punishment to Donald Trump, it isn't the punishment. The punishment is the fine. So now what's going to happen is all the property that they have, pay off all the debt. Funny thing is, Donald Trump says he doesn't have any debt. Well, we know he's in debt up to his eyeballs, but all the sales of the property is going to pay off the debt and then may ultimately pay off some of the fine, but not all of it.
Right.
So he's going to be on the hook for God knows how much to the state of New York, and he won't ever be able to fucking move.
Well, there's that. And then there's also how many liens must there be against Trump properties?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah. And that's a mess in its own right.
Yeah. I mean, he's notorious for not paying people who then get liens because they can't get any money out of him. And waiting for the sale of properties and so forth. Those have to be addressed. So he may not even have. He may be out on the street. I don't know where he's going to be.
Well, he might be out on the street because people will say, well, at least he'll have his home in Mar-a-Lago and his home in Bedminster. But they aren't his homes. They are part of the LLCs, again, to save money on taxes. And as a principal of the company, he's little more than an employee of the company. So he gets to stay there because he's an employee. But he will not be an employee anymore. He won't have control over anything. So do they kick his ass out? Theoretically, they could.
Yeah, we will see. But it's been. I was glad to see this one, which it's not settled yet, but I was glad to see it come to this point before all of the others, the Georgia and the documents and all of that. I mean, that is all criminal stuff, but this is what really hurts. Number one, it showed he was never a billionaire and he's a liar, and that he's a criminal, and everything that Hillary told us about him is absolutely true, and that everybody else has told us about him is absolutely true. So it was a good week. It was a good week, and it's I'm anxious to see this trial on. Is it Tuesday? It starts Monday or Tuesday? Monday.
Yeah, that's gonna be a fun motherfucking time. You know what's really telling, and you get a sense of Donald Trump's personality and his mindset. You have all this shit going on. They just told him that they are going to dissolve all his properties. And what does he say? He comes back and he says, this judge says, I'm not worth that much. I'm worth way more than that. I have hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank. All my bills are paid and all that stuff. The only thing he cared about was his image, not the fact he's losing fucking everything. He was worried about his image. And it reminds me of a time when because I've said my father and he have a similar personality. I was in a situation with my father long after I was old, and he was suing my uncle for something in small claims court, and I went with my uncle because my dad tends to run people over, and so I'm talking to him, and we got in a little bit of an argument. I looked at my father and I said, "Look, you're old, you're sickly, you're corrupt, you treated my mother horribly, you treated your family horribly, and you're a broke ass bitch. Out of all that I said to him, he says, how do you know I'm broke?
Mhm.
I said, you're not broke? I said, you're not broke? He goes, maybe not. I said, well, that's interesting because I have the same name as you. And I've had people come to my door thinking I owe them hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's not me. So they're disappointed. But since you're not broke, and I know you're the kind of guy that wants to do the right thing, and now that I have a court case where your address is, I'll just send it to him. And he looked at me and goes, fuck it, you won the case, just fuck you, get out of here. And that's Donald Trump in a nutshell. He's only
Yeah.
really concerned about the image. He can't see the big picture. He can't imagine losing because he's never fucking lost.
Right.
Everybody's bailed him out.
Well, I think we've reached a point now where, I mean, he has nothing to trade the Saudis or the Russians now. So they're not going to bail him out. And I don't think his daughter and son-in-law are going to bail him out with their $2 billion. Of course, they don't have the $2 billion, but whatever they get for managing it. But that ship has sailed. Eric and Don Jr. don't have anything. So it's going to be interesting to see where he winds up.
Well, Donnie's 78 years old. He doesn't have much time. Well, he'll be 78 years old. Doesn't have much time left. But Don Jr., Eric, and Ivanka, they got another 40 years in this world, and they got to figure out how they're going to survive. This whole thing with the $2 billion with Jared, that's starting to pique some people's interest. More and more people are talking about it. I wouldn't say Ivanka and Jared are out of the woods on that deal. That seems pretty shady. There's a lot of questions about that. But Donnie and Eric are going to have to do something they've never done before, assuming they stay out of jail. They'll have to get a fucking job. And who's going to hire those pieces of shit?
I don't know. Maybe they can get a reality show where they share a small apartment somewhere. You know, the Beavis and Butthead live or live. Whatever.
That's not a bad idea. I've often said when you put Donald Trump in a corner with his personality, that is the time when he's the most dangerous.
Oh, absolutely.
He will do crazy shit. He will say crazy shit. How crazy do you think it's going to get?
I think it's going to get real crazy. I've been saying this from the beginning. At some point, Don will run. And where he runs, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where he will run to. I think he'll try to leverage, well, I was president, so I know all these things. Yeah. And in theory, he does know a few things, but he knows about windmills and whales, for example. He knows those real well. And I mean, the guy's really losing it. I mean, it's like he has all these things rolling around in his head, and then they come together, and he heard somewhere that whales were beaching themselves because of a sound, and then he made it into windmills because he hates windmills because Scotland put windmills, blocking the view off of his golf course in Scotland. That's why he hates windmills. That's where that comes from. But he put those two things together, and now he's saying windmills kill whales, drive them crazy. This is the kind of insanity, and this is why I wonder. Anyone who's listening to this, who's a Republican, who supports Donald Trump, how pathetic are you? Yeah. I mean, what is it about you that lets you be taken in by this worthless piece of skin that's covered in makeup? And I don't understand it. It boggles my mind that there are still people who support him. And this is the thing, though. I mean, I can take delight in the fall of Donald Trump, but it's only the beginning. Everybody who enabled him, everybody in the Senate and the House who enabled Donald Trump, they are worthless. They need to be gone. I mean, you look at what's going on in the House right now with this pathetic impeachment inquiry where people show up with no evidence and they admit there's no evidence. And, well, we have to look and find, and I sure hope we can get him. it's going to be so good. I mean, of course, we
Yeah.
have no evidence. It's all of the Republican Party has to be repudiated. It has to be destroyed. I mean, if I can. We just lost a centrist Democrat, and that's Dianne Feinstein. And she had been around longer than she needed to be, but she was in her time a great force for good. I really think she was. She
I
stayed
do
too
too.
long. She stayed too long, and that's unfortunate. But we really need to celebrate what she was able to accomplish in her lifetime, which was substantial. And we need people like that who were willing to be in government to make a difference, to work across the aisle. We need people to go to Washington who say, uh, we need to solve a problem. And okay, there's a Democrat over here who has some ideas, and I have some ideas. We're going to put them together and come to some sort of compromise. If we can't get back to that, then we will never have a successful country again. It'll
No.
just be tilting back and forth. And eventually there will come a fall, and unfortunately, it'll fall on us. But, removing Donald Trump is a great thing. Seeing him get his comeuppance is a great thing. But it doesn't matter. I watched that debate on Monday, and I saw nothing. I saw empty clothes on stage. Only Christie was willing to take on Trump, and I would never vote for him either. But at
No.
least I like that he's there. But Ramaswamy, I mean, the empty suit, Ricky Tikki, Chavi,
Tim
all of these,
Scott.
Tim Scott, I call him Uncle Tim
Yeah.
Scott.
Yeah.
But I've got a nickname for all of them, but they're all pathetic.
Yeah.
These are the best that the Republicans come up with. And I read, I think it was in Atlantic, they had excerpts from Romney's book, right?
Mhm.
And who's saying, I'm done with this, I'm gone, right? And he basically said, all of the guys in the Senate are just there because there's nothing else for them to do. They're
Right.
rich guys, they like hanging out. He says, you go to the gym in the morning and they're plodding along on their treadmills with a one or something like that. They're these just pathetic old fools that they just enjoy the perks. That's why they're there. They're not there to solve any problems. They don't have the ideas to do it with anyway. The entire Republican Party has just, cut taxes on rich people. That's pretty much it. They're the front guys. They're the front guys for the oligarchs. That's the only reason. They use things like the cultural things to attract the votes of the bozos, the people. They're teaching CRT, whatever that is, and I can't stand that. But it's just a mess. I cannot understand how anybody can say I'm a Republican now
It's
and
hard.
feel any sort of pride in it.
It's difficult. And the problem is isn't Congress, it's supposed to be a place with compromise and negotiations. The
Yeah,
essence of Congress is bipartisanism. It's bringing two
exactly.
sides together to come up with a compromise. Now, in the last 6 years, there has been zero compromise. It's always votes along party lines. So that tells me that our Congress is fucking broken. It's not working the way it's supposed to work. The trouble is people think we'll get rid of Donald Trump and it'll be over. But like you say, Donald Trump is like a cancerous tumor. In many ways, he's like a cancerous
Right.
tumor. But
Yeah.
you cut that cancerous tumor out, it only does so much good because the shit has metastasized throughout the Republican Party. We'll have little bits and pieces of Donald Trump and the likes of Paul Gosar, Marjorie Taylor Greene, uh, Grassley, all these motherfuckers. So there's going to have to be a wholesale house cleaning of anybody that's been touched by that cancer.
Exactly. And I did a TikTok this morning. I looked back and I had written something back in 2016 of September 2016, right before Trump was elected president. The great sadness began, as one person, a friend of mine put it. And I said that the Republican Party, I said, Trump is the logical extension of all of the right-wing propaganda that we had for 20 years from talk radio and Fox
Right.
News. And he was enabled by reality television, who took this failed businessman, fake billionaire, serial abuser, and turned him into a successful businessman, and people bought it. And they, because they had been vilifying Hillary for 30 years, they,
Right.
that have managed to happen. That in essence, the Republican Party had become the kids who weren't invited to the party.
Right.
And there was no bigger resentment than that. And Trump became the kid who threw a flaming bag of dog poop on the front porch just to show people, right? But now we've reached a place where they're not flinging dog poop anymore. They're really trying to burn down the house where the party's happening.
Right.
And that's what the Republican Party is all about. I'll give you an example close to my home here. I just heard that the Republicans in Tennessee, which, the legislature's out of session now till the first of the year. They've done all the damage they can do right now.
Right.
But they have a working committee who's trying to figure out a way that they can reject $1.8 billion in education funds from the federal government.
Wow. That's
Now, why do they want to do that? It's because then they can not have federal mandates on education. Okay, your kid's in a wheelchair and he needs special help. That's on you, buddy. You're going to have to homeschool that kid, because now we're not going to take that federal money that helps pay for that sort of thing, that he can have an aide in school or anything else that's a federal mandate on the educational system. They'll be able to throw away. And that means they'll destroy the public schools. They'll make everything either religious schools or some sort of a charter school where nobody learns anything except what they want them to learn. And I really believe that Tennessee has become sort of kind of a test kitchen, if you will, for right-wing ideology. That they're trying to do all of this stuff here because they have a very compliant legislature and governor that they can try all of this bullshit. So they've been rejecting Medicare expansion for years, which means people are not insured and people die because there's not the Medicare funds for them. Rural hospitals close because they're dependent on Medicare people, but they don't have the money to stay open. So we have rural hospitals closing. We have now we're going to have schools closing because they won't be able to be funded because they're dependent on that federal money. And I can guarantee you this working committee is going to come up with some cockamamie plan that they claim will work, but of course it won't. But they will try very hard to do that.
I think Donald Trump was the one person who had the key to Pandora's box. We know with regards to racism, anti-Semitism, misogyny, these people that are out speaking loudly now were always there, but they were hiding under rocks. Donald Trump came in, did what he did, and made it okay for them to come out from underneath those rocks. But I think the same can be said about politics. There were a lot of politicians who had these fascist or racist or whatever ideas, but they always were held down by the norms or that it would be thought to be inappropriate. As soon as Donald Trump started speaking this shit, they said, fucking yay, now I can say what I really think. So what I'm saying is like the racist in this country, these fascists in our government have always been there. Donald Trump opens the door and now they're just flailing around like fucking knuckleheads. And so basically what we have to do in this country, because we can't get rid of the racists, we can't eliminate them, we can't eliminate the fascists in governments. We basically have to get rid of Donald Trump and then put the genie back in the fucking bottle. And that's not going to be easy.
Exactly. I remember when I was in basic training and our first sergeant stood up and he looked down over this group of us who, given that it was still the tail end of Vietnam, was largely rural whites and ghetto blacks.
Right.
These were the people that couldn't get out of the draft somehow. Now, I had a college degree. I had just graduated. My exemption was up. I got my draft notice. I enlisted. But I was there with guys who hadn't enlisted. They'd all been drafted and so forth, and they hated each other. You know, they'd never been around each other, for one thing. A lot of the black guys were from Harlem, from New York City. We had Puerto Rican guys from Puerto Rico who'd been drafted from Puerto Rico who could barely speak English, and we had all these farm boys, and they did not gel. Or they weren't gelling. And the first sergeant, who was this huge black guy, he stands up and says, "You know, you're in the Army now. And you come in here with your attitudes. I can't change your attitude, but I can damn sure change your behavior."
Yeah, exactly.
And we believed him. And believe it or not, though, after that was said and so forth, these guys eventually formed friendships and were able to work together, because the stigma was off in a way. Is we're all in this together. And if we don't complete what we're supposed to do, we're going to suffer for it. So they put aside all of their they were able to put aside, for the most part, not everybody, but they were able to put aside their prejudices and realize that, okay, yeah, we are all in this together. And what we need is a big first sergeant to stand up to the country and say, "I can't change your attitude, but I can damn sure change your behavior."
Yeah,
and that's what we
yeah.
need.
I've often said that after experiencing Donald Trump and the Republican Party as they are now, it's like we have a country full of abuse victims. There might be some PTSD. There's people with twitches now because I mean, that's the thing that's saddest to me. And I don't remember ever seeing this. When I do the TikToks, when we do the podcast, I get people all the time saying, "I'm just so afraid." I mean, there was a time when people didn't even pay attention to politics, and now they're fearful of what might come. These are people that have been traumatized or abused over the last 6 years, and we got to deal with that too.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing I look at. It's time to get beyond politics to a degree, and I'm talking to Democrats here, as Democrats as well as Republicans. We're getting ready for a government shutdown. And I don't see how they can stop it at this point. But the big problem is that we have a party that will not negotiate. They want everything. You know, a portion of them do. And we have a speaker who they own because they have just enough votes to kick him out. You know, I mean, a person with any sort of pride in themselves would say, "Kick me out. Do it. See what happens." But McCarthy is not that kind of guy. You know, he's not going to do that. And so he's trying to hang in there as long as he can, but he's already failed. We see that.
He has failed horribly. Yeah.
And to let Matt Gaetz and Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene dictate what the country should do, I mean, this is it makes my gorge rise, as they say, to even consider that that these people have any say in what is done in this country. And
giving them say in this country is kind of like allowing my 3-year-old granddaughter to do my taxes next year.
Yeah, exactly.
She'll give it a shot, but she doesn't know what the fuck she's doing.
No, yeah, and she'd do a better job than they would, because she would not have the attitude going in, because that's the idea. They want to destroy the federal government. They want everything to go back to where each state is this little fiefdom that they have control of. You see, and that's why I say Tennessee is the test kitchen, because that's what they're doing here. They're trying to put the federal government out of control of the states at all. And that's just insane. I remember our original motto was "E pluribus unum," one from many.
Right.
And that, the one is more important than the many, quite frankly. Right. And we've lost sight of that, and we've got to get it back somehow. And I'm hoping that the outrage that the Republican Party has become will reach out to people. The people will see that and say, what have we done? We've got to vote these people out. We've got to destroy this party. We've got to make it go away and only allow people of goodwill and with real smarts to solve these problems, because there is not a problem we have that we don't have the answer to.
Right.
I mean, all we have to do is get rid of the tax cuts from Reagan on up.
Right.
And we can fund everything we need to fund, whether it's military, education, healthcare. We could make this a much better place. It'll never be a paradise. Of course it won't. And there'll always be winners and losers to an extent. But we can make it a much better playing field, and that there are not automatic losers. There's not generational poverty that can't ever be solved. We can do that because we just can't let people, 1% of the population have all the money. That's just insane. And there's no rationalization for that. We've got to restore competition in the marketplace, because there is none now.
No.
And we've got to hold businesses to task. And make Katie Porter president, give her a whiteboard and let her kick ass, and we'll be fine.
That sounds good. We're going to take a quick break here, but you were talking about the shutdown, and that is imminent. We're less than a day away from this shutting down, and we'll talk about that in the next half. This show is going to air Saturday, so we don't know what'll happen after the recording of this, and hopefully it'll be saved, but it's not looking good. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Alrighty.
We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Ed is joining me on the show today, and we're going to talk about the shutdown. Right now, as we speak, as we're doing this right now, we're about 35 hours from the shutdown. What is that, midnight Saturday night? But of course, this is airing Saturday. Between now and by the time you hear this, I'm not sure what's going to happen. But the whole shutdown thing doesn't look like it's moving in the right direction at this point. And we're hours away from a shutdown, so it does seem like the shutdown's imminent.
Yeah, they passed 3 spending bills, but neither of them. One of them was rejected. They brought up 3, and neither of the ones they passed will make it through the Senate. So it's a waste of time. I mean, in the House, they voted on 3 spending bills overnight, and the 2 they passed, of course, are just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So they won't make it through the Senate or anything. So it was a waste of time.
When we were originally talking about the shutdown like a month ago, I said that what will probably happen will be the same thing that happened with the debt ceiling. They'll come up with some either short-term decision at the last minute of the last day, because we know how the politicians love the drama and the theater of it all, and the idea of looking like the heroes to save the day. As people listen to this now, we may be like 12 hours away from a shutdown unless something else has been figured out. It does seem imminent, but I'm confused by the Republicans. If there is a shutdown, they're the ones pushing the shutdown, the MAGA fucks, but they're the ones that are going to be harmed the most.
When you have Newt Gingrich saying this doesn't make sense and trying to talk them out of it, that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. That's true. You notice how Biden is kind of keeping hands off of this. He's not in the middle trying to negotiate this stuff. He's just sitting back. Do you think that's because he knows how devastating it's going to be for the Republicans, and he's saying, fuck yourself up?
I think that the Democratic leaders of the House and Senate and President Biden are probably drinking wine in the background. Not really, but they're actually saying this is going to help us. So let's let them squirm. Let's let them twist in the wind here because I mean McCarthy was demanding essentially a meeting with Biden, which didn't happen.
Right.
Why would Biden meet with him at this point? I mean, he has given him every opportunity he needed to do what he needed to do, and he didn't do it. You know,
Right.
because he put himself in this position when he became speaker with the votes of the MAGAs that gave them all the power they needed over him. All it takes is one to get rid of him, and then what do they have? I don't think they could have enough votes to get anybody else as speaker. So what happens? Is government totally closed down forever? I don't know. It's just insane. But I do know that the Republicans, will get the blame, and I mean they're hurting the military. They're hurting the border, where they say they're all so concerned, but I can't imagine being a Border Patrol agent right now and having to show up on a daily basis and deal with this stuff and then not be paid on top of it. I can't believe that there wouldn't be some sort of pushback there.
Now, some people might say about the Democrats and Joe Biden particularly, by being hands off, saying, you know, it's going to be bad for the Republicans, but they're ignoring the fact that it's going to be bad for the people of this country. And I think I need to explain it to people why they are doing that. You have to understand, during the debt ceiling thing, Biden and Kevin McCarthy got together. They
shook hands.
They struck a deal. Now, if they would have stuck with that deal, if Kevin McCarthy would have stuck with the deal, we wouldn't be going through this. This would have been passed and done and all over. But Kevin McCarthy, a weak ass pussy, decided to renege on that deal. So if I'm Joe Biden, I'm going to say, what good is it to talk to Kevin McCarthy? I can't trust the motherfucker. I can't understand. I can't believe anything he says. So by talking to him, I don't really get anywhere. Biden actually saved Kevin McCarthy's ass when that debt ceiling passed, because he would have taken a beating after that. And I'm sure Joe's going, I'm not saving this fucker's ass anymore. Sure, it's going to hurt other people, but what can I do? He won't listen to anything.
Well, that's all you have is your good name in politics. If you strike a deal, you have to follow through on it. And McCarthy is twice now. I mean, we have him on record saying you can't have an impeachment without a vote, a floor vote. You got to have a floor vote on impeachment. And then what does he do? He launches an impeachment without a floor vote. He goes back on exactly what he said like a week before. And now, he struck a deal, and it was all resolved. And Biden made concessions that I'm sure he did not want to make to get that deal. And yet here we are. It's like it's like a Trump deal. I mean, he would strike a deal with somebody, and then he'd come back in 2 years and say we have to negotiate because things have changed, and so on and so on and so on, and tied up with lawyers and so forth, and then eventually not pay. And that's exactly what it's like. McCarthy's taking it from the Trump playbook. Make a deal that you don't really want to make because you're going to renege on it later anyway.
Right. Sometimes in order to fix things, you just have to rip the Band-Aid off. Biden kind of helped out McCarthy during the debt ceiling. We're getting close to the 2024 election. We know the Republicans have the capacity to burn themselves down, and we know it will affect the country and it'll affect other people. But maybe at some point, you got to just burn it down, let them burn it down to hopefully grow back a better forest. I have to wonder if that's not in his mind.
I think if we look at a historical precedent, 1929, right? They'd had all of the Wall Street was out of control. Nothing was worth anything, and it all eventually crumbled and fell apart, and fortunes were lost and so forth. And but what came out of that was the FDR presidency that enabled labor and basically put a rein in on corporations and destroyed some of them and so forth. And we had a couple of decades of prosperity based on that.
Right.
And then they came back and they cut these deals and they moved all of the manufacturing offshore and hurt the labor unions and so forth. And they started passing tax cuts for billionaires. And we're back to that point. We're back at that point now where maybe it does have to be torn down. Maybe it does.
Yeah.
I don't know. I personally think that if people would wake up and give Joe Biden another term, and then whoever follows Joe, whether it's Kamala or whoever it is, if we can do 4 back-to-back Democratic administrations, we can get back to prosperity in this country. If we get another Republican in there, it's just going to be the same thing over again. They'll just defer to the corporations. That's what they do. And quite frankly, when you defer to corporations, you're a traitor, because corporations have no loyalty to this country. They're international in scope now. I don't care where they say that they're chartered or whatever. They have no loyalty to any country. So unless you can get rid of that oligarchy that is fueling the Republican Party, that owns them lock, stock, and barrel, we're in big trouble.
I said, as bad as it has been the last several years, I do really feel like we're at a turning point. I think that politically speaking, the Republicans have gotten away with a lot over the last 30 years. With the Republicans, the only thing that's ever come in the last 30 years is recession. And then the Democrats build it up. Yet when we get to an election, the Republicans say, we got to do this, we got to do that. And the people at large, the Republicans anyway, say, yeah, you're right, we got to do that. And then they make the wrong choice. We go to shit and the Democrats have to fix it up. You have to wonder how long it takes people to learn a lesson. And maybe,
I don't know.
Well, maybe it's this disastrous moment in time when everything comes crashing down where they'll finally say, oh yeah, you were fucking right.
Yeah, I mean, that was the not that there was anything great about the Great Depression, but
No.
it did put in the public mind that the Republicans did it. They got the blame for it. Now, it wasn't just the Republicans. There were Democratic administrations in there that contributed and let people get away with stuff also. But the Republicans got the blame. And then they saw the Roosevelt administration trying to help people out, doing things that made it a little better until we've climbed our way out of it. And of course, without World War II, I don't know if we ever would have, because that got people back to work for the war effort. I mean, there were so many things that were almost, you wouldn't think would be the World War is not a good thing, but it did help reestablish the American economy, and it destroyed the world economy. So we were on top of the world there for a couple of decades, right?
Right. Well, so if midnight tonight, assuming when you listen to this podcast that nothing has been resolved and we see nothing to suggest that it is going to be resolved unless gutless Kevin McCarthy caves again, which is distinctly possible. If we have a shutdown, some of these people are suggesting, well, it'll be kind of a soft shutdown because the first is Saturday, or no, the first is Sunday, so nothing's really going on anyway. So they got a whole nother day. Well, you've had fucking 7 months to do this. You had 7, and you haven't done jack shit. This is how they're like little children they're like me with homework. If I had 2 weeks to do homework, I do it 3 hours before I had to be at fucking school. And this is what they're doing with this. If there is a shutdown, what do you think will happen at that point? How long do you think it'll go?
I wish I knew. I cannot, given the state of the Republican Party now, and that so much has to start out in the House of Representatives, which is a dysfunctional body. I don't know how you fix it. If it were me, I would tell Merrick Garland, get off your ass and indict these 6 people. The ones that are holding up the House, if you indicted Matt Gaetz and Green and Boebert and Gozar and Biggs, and they're all guilty. Go ahead and indict them and get them out of the way. That's one thing you could do.
I've said that for a long time. We're waiting for the superseding indictments, and we presume, the only person that that Jack Smith is indicted is Donald Trump. We know there's more coming. We're waiting for the superseding indictments. We haven't seen them as yet. I've often said if we just indicted some of these sitting members of Congress, we might be able to stop the bubbling over of the rhetoric in this shit. You indict people, that shuts them up real quickly. And if Jack Smith is missing anything, he's waiting too long to do that.
Yeah. Well, and this could be separate from Jack Smith. I mean, this could be, and I don't mean just indict him, arrest him, throw him in jail, get them out. That way they can't vote. They're not in the, just pull them out. Be ruthless. I mean, Trump is ruthless. You've got to be ruthless back sometimes. Let the Supreme Court decide on it 6 months from now, but get them out of the way.
Well, that's the one thing everybody said up until the time Donald Trump came into office. We need a business mind in there to run this country like a business, so we're not losing money or constantly in the red. Unfortunately, the culture in business is vastly different than public service. There is a certain amount of ruthlessness and cutthroat. I've been in business and I've had to make some of those decisions. Those aren't the same kind of decisions you make while you're in government. To compare businessmen to politicians, it doesn't make any sense. And Donald Trump is the proof in the pudding that putting a businessman, albeit a shitty businessman, but a businessman in the position of president, it doesn't work. That's why when I hear Vivek Ramaswamy, we need somebody from outside. Well, Vivek, we did that and it didn't turn out too well, so shut the fuck up.
Exactly. And no, the one thing we do not need is a businessman. When people say that, I want to slap them because you don't understand. Read the damn Constitution, read the preamble. What are you supposed to do? Provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. It doesn't say a damn thing about business. No. What it says is that you do the most good for the most people all the time. It's not transactional. It's not you picking winners and losers, right? You try to make it better for everybody all the time. And that doesn't mean that you have giant corporations like Amazon paying less taxes than I do. No, that does not work. It doesn't mean that you were who the candidate is going to be is determined by a bunch of people in a cloakroom somewhere who think that he will give them the best deal. No, that's not the way it's supposed to work.
Well, there's a big difference between business and government. In government, there should be a certain amount of compassion. You're getting taxes from people and there are people in need and the government is there to serve you. In business, it's a much different deal. The people at the top do everything they can to spend as little money as they can and make as much money as possible. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I employed that in my mind when I was in business too. However, we have situations like the United Auto Workers. These people are making billions of dollars and paying these people as little as possible. And that's another trend I'm starting to see too. Over and above the political aspect of it, I think employment in this country is going to change too. The writer's strike was figured out. And they got that straightened out. The UAW, what people don't understand is whatever happens with the UAW, if the union workers get anything out of this, it will have a ripple effect in other businesses and for other people around the country. It's important these things take place, and it's important that the employees win because that puts us on the path of getting everybody in a better situation.
Yeah, and I've got to say, if Biden never does anything else, going to the picket line was very important, and pointing out that just a few years ago, the automakers were in the toilet.
Right.
They
Right.
were doomed. They were fucking doomed, right? But the UAW made concessions. They took less. They helped to save this, and our tax dollars were poured in to those automakers to save them because they were too big to fail, just
Right.
like we did with the insurance companies, just like we did with the big banks and so forth. And then they want to go, well, say, well, thanks, but now we got to make money. Well, fuck you. No, no. You don't get your 40%. Your executive pay goes up by 40%, and your workers get $2. No, it doesn't work that way. It's time to pay the piper. It's time to repay those who made the concessions that allowed them to survive. And it's the same with every other industry out there. And it's not the unregulated accumulation of capital is what is wrong with this country right now.
Right.
Hedge funds, private equity, allowing mounds of money. You can change the outcome of any election if you have enough money. It's just that simple.
Right.
And that has to be addressed. And we have to get taxation back to the point where it's almost punitive to a degree, so that you cannot get this vast accumulation of capital. When that happens, the next thing always is tyranny. Always.
Right. Well, in the history of this country, there have been watershed moments when things change for the better. And usually it comes after a lot of fucking turmoil.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm wondering and I'm hoping that with all the turmoil we're experiencing, both in the corporate world and in the political world, with all this turmoil and all these trials and tribulations, that maybe this is the watershed moment. We brought this all to the surface. That's the one thing that Donald Trump did was positive. All these things that are bubbling around Donald Trump were always there, but they were hidden or they were under the cover of darkness. And now it's all been exposed. This gives us an opportunity for that watershed moment. Now we know what we know and we can fix it and we can act accordingly. We can vote accordingly now that we know what we know. There's going to be some people that are just fucking oblivious and there's nothing we can do about them. All we really need to worry about is the vast majority of the people with a reasonable mind to grasp it and then fucking react to it.
Yeah, and we got to have people in power who will rein in the crazies. I mean, okay, you have what's your name, Boebert,
Lauren Boebert.
Lauren, that's it.
The
You have Lauren
groomer. The groomer.
Yeah. She goes to see Beetlejuice and makes out with she gropes this guy and gets groped and vapes and all of this stuff. And then within a couple of days, she's up on she's introducing a bill to reduce a person's salary in the Defense Department to $1 because they're trans.
Right.
This is insanity. Yeah. This should be shouted down. Everybody in that chamber should just pick her up and throw her out the front door and say, you're done. You are expelled from this body.
Yeah.
Because, number one, your behavior is beyond the pale. And number two, this is prejudice. This is on such a level that you're saying because this person is different than you, they should not be able to make a living. They should not be. It boggles my mind that anybody can tolerate that the Speaker of the House cannot look at her and say, no, you can't introduce that bullshit. Yeah. Because I'm throwing you out. You're no longer on a committee, so you're not able to do that.
That further shows how this government is broken, because if you took people like Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, and this were the 70s or 80s or even the 90s, they'd already be fucking gone. They'd never survive. Yeah. They'd never fucking survive. But things have changed so dramatically due to the actions of the Republican Party they've normalized this fucking behavior, and that is dangerous to this country.
It is, and we have to bring up Bob Menendez here. The guy's probably a sleazebag. I mean, he's been here before. He's been accused of stuff before and survived, and here he is with his money and his gold bars and all of that. And
Yeah.
he gets his day in court. But the Democrats, at least some of them, are stepping up and saying this guy's got to go. Now, it pissed me off a few years ago when they got rid of Al Franken on something that was a right-wing plot that worked, and the Democrats, of course, ate their own and threw out Al Franken, right? Well, this is a chance where they need to do that. And we see that they are doing it, while George Santos is still a representative in the Republican Party.
Right. There are 30 members of the 30 Democrats in the Senate that have called for his resignation. Now, the fucked up thing about this Menendez isn't that he committed these crimes. It's the second time in like 2 years. Exactly. He got off the first time because he's a U.S. senator. Now this time, I was talking to Eric on this show, and he pointed something out to me, and I didn't think about it. When I heard about the $100,000 of gold bars,
yeah,
I thought, in my head, I'm picturing a pallet of gold bars, and that's fucking outrageous. Like, it's 50 ounces because it's about 2,000 an ounce. So it's 50, it could be 2 bars. It could be little teeny bars. And he said it's not as big a deal as far as the way it looks. I said, but it's still $100,000 of gold. That's a little more than I have on hand, or anybody has on hand. I mean, it's a sure way to pay somebody off without having much of a paper trail.
Right, and cash also. He says it's because his family, lost all their money in Cuba. It was confiscated, and they had to flee to the United States. I can buy that, but like I say, give the guy his day in court. All right,
I can buy that too, if you were still in fucking Cuba. It's just not going to get confiscated in the United States.
Exactly.
Secondly, how do you determine how much extra cash you have to have? I mean, I'll keep cash in my house, maybe 1,000 or a couple of thousand just for emergencies or something. But $500,000?
Where do you keep that?
Yeah, where do you keep that? Probably in boxes in his bathroom. Now, he's a Democrat, and he is a piece of shit. And this is what I've always said. We go after the Republicans, but don't sleep on the Democrats. Democrats largely are better than Republicans, but not all of them. There are some grifting pieces of shit on the Democratic side. And we really got to not only get rid of the Republicans that are bad, we need to, once we do that, go after Democrats that are working against this country and all of us.
Can you say Manchin and Sinema?
Exactly. Well, I think Manchin is pretty much gone. I think Sinema is pretty much gone. The only bad thing about Manchin leaving, and it's only marginally bad, is they'll probably get a Republican. They'll gain a Republican seat in the Senate when Manchin goes. But it's funny. We kept hearing about Manchin and Robert Kennedy Jr. and all these third-party people. You aren't hearing too much about that anymore, are you? There's just no support, no money. Everybody got all worked up about it, and I said, don't worry about it. They aren't going to be there, and they aren't.
No money. Nobody's going to fuel it. It's going to be between Biden and whoever steps up at the last minute after Trump goes to prison, because I really do think the fall of Trump is coming. It's already begun, and it will. It's like, when an avalanche starts with one snowball. You start that snowball rolling down the hill, and before you know it, you got one the size of Texas. Well, this is what's coming at Trump. Just hide and watch.
And there's no question it started after this decision by Judge Engeron, taking away all his shit. I mean, Donald Trump's in a bad situation. He's grifting money, but he's getting less money. They're taking away all his income, all his property, his identity. They're taking away from him. The only thing that people paid him any mind to is because he was rich and maybe a little famous. Well, now he's no longer rich. He doesn't own this shit. He is now infamous instead of famous. And all all the money he does grift has to go to defense attorneys. He's got zero money to run for president.
Right.
I've said I don't think he's going to be the nominee as much as he's so far ahead. I think all this shit coming down, and it's coming down now. There's no way he can survive to run for president. It's just not possible.
No, well, number one, he's going to be in court every day. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
how do I mean, I'm always surprised that there are still people supporting him, period.
Right.
But, we saw every time he got indicted, his poll numbers went up. Well, I question the polls for one
Oh,
thing. Who are they asking and what are they asking? Till I see that, then if they give me the questions and they told me who they asked, then maybe I'll put some credence in their poll. But no, I mean it's they get what they want to get out of it, right? And we saw the red wave was a coming. Oh, look out! Here comes the red wave. Well, it
right.
didn't.
No.
So.
Well, we've been hearing this, and a Washington Post poll came out that said that with a faction of people that Donald Trump was leading Joe Biden by double digits. That's absolutely fucking ridiculous. They're trying to sell papers. They're trying to
Right.
sell viewers. It's ridiculous. There is no way that Donald Trump is even close to Joe Biden. I'll be honest with you. I don't think Donald Trump will be the nominee in 2024, but I hope he is, because that's the chance for a fucking landslide for Joe Biden. Donald Trump poses no fucking threat at this point.
Nor does any other Republican. I mean,
no.
DeSantis is a joke. Ramaswamy is a joke. Nikki Haley, this is Republicans we're talking about. She's a woman.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but they are very much, they will. My wife says the first Republican president or woman president will be a Republican. She might be right. I don't know. But it's not yet. It's not yet, and it's not Nikki.
Well, no, it's not Nikki. And I think she might be right. And here's why. After 2024 and they get all wiped out, they're going to have to reimagine, rehabilitate themselves. They're going to have to come out with something to give them a win, because they're going to be on a long stretch of losing streaks. And even the Republicans at that point will bend to find a female candidate. But let's look at the members of Congress right now, or the Republican governors that are women. Who would that be? Kristi Noem? Fuck no. She ain't going to be president. There is no Republican woman that could win the presidency now, but they're going to have to do something down the road.
If there is a big repudiation, Liz Cheney would be in the running.
She would be in the running, but I don't know that she would win, because she's too hardcore right. I mean, people appreciate her integrity, but I think what's going to happen down the road, we got to go a little way left to bring it back from the far right. But I think what we normally do in this country is we stick with the Joe Bidens or the Dianne Feinsteins, the more centrist. Those are the ones that are in the country, and we've gone too radical to the right. So we've got to try to bring it back to the center to keep the majority of people happy.
And I'm fine with that, because you can call Joe a centrist, but he has certainly been. He has gone further left than Clinton. He's gone further left than Obama, even in getting stuff for people who need it. And that's what we need. He's centrist in that he has built up over time credibility with both sides to a degree, so he can negotiate and make a handshake, and people know that he means it. And that's big capital there, having that integrity.
You have to understand, politicians will have a base of being centrist or far left or far right, but they will do whatever is expedient to them to beat the opposing party. We got Joe Biden going far left, even though he's a centrist, because that's what he needs to do to beat the Republicans. Another example of that was Lyndon Johnson.
Yep.
He his ideology was nothing like JFK Jr.'s or JFK Sr.'s. But when JFK died, he knew that was the way to build steam and power for him. So he passed more fucking bills than almost anybody. And he was basically a Democratic fucking racist thug.
Pretty much. But he was what we needed at the time. I despised him at the time largely because of the Vietnam War, and I was in college and I was against the war. I have come to admire what he was able to do since then. My perspective changed at the time, and I mean from that time. But and now I do admire him, and I do think Joe Biden could be another one who would get as much significant legislation passed. Heck, he already has.
Right.
And he needs to get credit for that.
My thought is if I'm 82 years old and I'm the president, and I have 4 more years and I don't even know if I'm going to fucking make it, and I've been a centrist, I go full left, pass as much shit for the people that will affect my kids and my grandkids and my great grandkids, and walk out of there with the greatest legacy of any president in the history of the country. That's what you do.
That's what you do, and that's what I'm hoping for, and that's what I expect in the second Biden presidency, which I do expect to happen. What we have to do is make sure he has a House and Senate that will go along with it. And if the Supreme Court tries to get in the way, expand the court and say "fuck you."
Well, that's the thing is, Joe Biden has always said, "Well, I don't know if I want to expand the court." And he's always said, "I don't know if we want to get rid of the filibuster." I'm hoping that once he's passed his last election and he's won, he changes his mind on those things, because both those things are crucial to the success of this country moving forward.
Well, the Supreme Court was pushing back on FDR's legislation, and he pretty much put it to them. You can either pass you can either give me your okay on this, or I will expand the court. And they backed down. But that's what Joe needs to do.
Well, that's what he needs to do. But I think we're in a different situation now, because you're talking about a little bit of a shred of integrity. And I don't think there's any integrity. You can't give them a choice to back down. You just got to fucking hammer them and change it. Because we know with Republicans, they'll say, "Oh yeah, we'll do that." Kevin McCarthy, Joe Biden, they have this negotiation. You can't trust them because they won't follow up on their promises or their deals. So with regards to the Supreme Court, you just got to fucking hammer them, expand it, and just take it away from them. You can't even threaten them anymore.
Right, and it's the right thing to do. There should be 13 of them. It's obvious that's the case, and if we can do it where we come out with a majority, so much the better.
Well, the thing is I think the progressive side of the Democrats are going to have a lot more influence on on Joe Biden in the next term, because, like I say, Joe Biden has nothing to lose at that point. He can rectify a lot of problems. I mean, he could, if he did what he could do in the second term, he could be on the level with FDR.
I believe that 100%, and it's so unlikely. When he was elected, I thought, geez, Delaware, good grief. I mean, that's where all the corporations are, chartered, But he surprised me when he came right out with legislation that made a huge difference, and he was able to get bipartisan support for them, which was even better. Which shows it can be done if you get rid of the crazies.
Well, Biden has got 50 years in Washington, D.C. He knows how to play the game. And that's the one big problem that Donald Trump did. He thought he could bully his way through, but he didn't understand how to play the game. And the game was bigger than Donald Trump, and he never imagined that.
And this is what people need to remember about Donald Trump. And the Republicans, listen to this. He knows nothing.
No, he knows
his head is empty. He is a transactional reactionary. All he can do is react and try to bully his way through. But he understands nothing. He knows no facts. He knows no history. He knows nothing.
No, he is absolutely ignorant. And I'm surprised it's taken this long for a lot of people to understand that. I knew it from the moment I heard him first talk. because the things he said had no bearing. You know, it reminds me of that movie with Peter Sellers, where the guy
Yes.
was basically
Being there.
being
Being there.
there. He just
Yeah.
heard shit on television and they said, "Oh my God, that's profound." And it was
Yep.
just something he saw on Dick Van Dyke, you know, it's just, and that's how Donald Trump is. Donald Trump got lucky that there's enough stupid people to think he's a fucking genius.
Yes, exactly. And well, I guess we'll see what happens over the next 2 days.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. We're going to wrap things up, but Ed, thanks for joining me. It's always a pleasure to talk to somebody that's almost as intelligent as I am.
Almost.
I'm kidding. I'm
I
kidding.
know.
People always say you're being arrogant. Nah, I'm being sarcastic. I'm a dumbass. I know I'm a dumbass. I'm just I just read a lot. Anyway,
Exactly.
well, Ed, we'll talk next week, and we'll see how things go as we're going through the next week. But the next week promises to be another shit show with the trials and all the shit that's happening. It's fucking crazy, and I enjoy it actually.
Me too. The shoes are dropping like crazy. That's all I can say.
The shoes are dropping, no question. All right. Well, those of you that were listening, thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope you have a great day. And of course, we'll talk to you again tomorrow.